Pine Barrens is funny on the surface, but underneath it is one of the clearest moments where Tony is forced to look at his own leadership problem in the mirror. Not the FBI, not New York, not some brilliant enemy move against him. Just the simple truth that when he is not personally holding the wheel, his grown men do not act like grown men. They act like kids who have been handed responsibility they did not earn. And the second something gets stressful, they stop thinking like operators and start thinking like cornered animals. Tony does not get this lesson as some clean speech. He feels it in real time, through a day that should have been routine and turns into a mess only he can clean up. The job is supposed to be the easiest kind of work in Tony's world. A collection, an errand that sits at the very bottom of the danger scale. No long planning, no sit-downs, no complicated rules. Just go there, get what is owed, and come back. Tony gives it to Paulie and Christopher because Silvio is sick, and Silvio is usually the one you trust when you want things done cleanly. That detail matters more than it seems. The one dependable adult in the room is out, and Tony fills the gap with two men who have seniority and attitude, but not the calm control that real responsibility needs. Right away you see the difference between a man who can earn and a man you can trust with a problem. Paulie and Christopher can earn. They can lean on people, intimidate, make money appear, push a situation with force. They are not cowards. They are not lazy. On paper, they are exactly the kind of guys you send to fix a simple money issue. But the job in front of them is not just about muscle. It is restraint. It is reading the room. It is knowing when the work is already done and not needing to win some extra, invisible battle on top of it. It is leaving your ego in the car. And that is exactly where the childishness begins. They get the money. That should be the end of the story. In a crew of real professionals, this scene would last 3 minutes and nobody would ever talk about it again. But Paulie cannot help himself. He needles Valeri, provokes him, tries to dominate the moment. Not because the business needs it, but because Paulie needs it. He wants to feel big. He wants to feel like the man in charge. It is the same impulse that makes little kids poke and poke at each other until somebody swings and then acts shocked that a fight broke out. The collection stops being a job and becomes a personal contest, and personal contests are where these guys lose their minds. From Tony's angle, this is already a nightmare, even before he knows the details. He is not there, and the whole point of having captains and senior guys is that Tony should not have to be there. Delegation is supposed to buy him space to think, to handle bigger moves, to live some kind of life. Instead, delegation buys him surprises. He sends 2 men out to pick up an envelope, and he gets a phone call about a dead or almost dead Russian, a body in the trunk. In a situation that might drag in Slava and people Tony really does not want angry at him. A tiny job has become a problem with long arms. This is where Tony starts to really feel it, not as some abstract idea, but as a pattern he cannot escape. He has built an organization where he is the only real adult, and almost everyone else is either a talented thug or an emotional mess. The men under him are not stupid in some simple way. They are worse than that. They are immature. Immaturity is dangerous because it can look like confidence until pressure hits. Then it turns into panic, blame, and bad decisions piled on top of each other. Paulie and Christopher solve. They're a mistake the way children solve problems. They do not slow down. They do not stop and ask what the larger risk is. They do not think about the chain reaction. They rush straight into the next move with the same messy minds that made the first move. They decide to drive the body out to the Pine Barrens. They turn a contained apartment problem into a wilderness problem. And the wilderness is where the episode strips them down completely, because now there is no crew around them, no comfort, no routine, no audience to impress. It is just 2 men with guns, fear, and resentment. Once they lose control of Valeri, the comedy is obvious, but the point underneath is darker. These are made men, trusted men, people with rank. On the street, other guys look up to them. At home, they see themselves as bosses. And yet they cannot even handle themselves for one night without turning on each other. They bicker like brothers trapped in the backseat of a car on a long drive. They hoard petty power. They argue about who is in charge while accomplishing nothing. Christopher complains that Paulie lost his shoe. Paulie fires at shadows in the trees. They yell, "We're gonna die out here," as if they are teenagers lost after a party, not killers who have spent years living outside the law. All of this chaos is a defense against a simple truth. They are lost. They are cold. They are scared. And they are in over their heads. Their rank does not protect them. Their reputation does not protect them. Their guns do not protect them. This is what they are without Tony, 2 scared kids hiding behind tough talk. Tony's moment of realization is stretched across the whole day in the way he moves through it. It is not one big speech. It is a series of phone calls where he tries to get basic information and keeps getting chaos in return. In the fantasy version of this life, captains are supposed to be steady. They are supposed to be the ones you call to calm things down. They give you clean answers and clean options. Instead, Tony gets excuses, half-truths, and the kind of broken storytelling you get from kids who broke something valuable and are trying to control how you find out. Paulie especially reacts in the only way he knows when he is scared. He talks. He talks to cover himself, to spin the story, to make himself sound like he did everything right and bad luck did the rest. He shifts blame onto Christopher. He paints himself as the victim of disrespect, of a crazy Russian, of anything except his own ego. Christopher, on the other side, complains about how Paulie handled it, about how he got dragged into the mess. The more they talk, the more obvious it becomes that neither one is willing to stand still and accept responsibility like a grown man. So Tony does what he always ends up doing. He becomes their father. He leaves his warm, controlled world and drives out toward the snow with Bobby because even Tony can feel that Bobby, the guy everyone jokes about, is at least stable enough to be useful in the woods. The show plays his hunting gear and his orange hat for laughs, but the joke hides a serious insult to Tony's system. The boss of North Jersey is leaning on Bobby Bacala, who is treated like a gentle punchline most of the time, to track down two big guys who turned a collection into a survival story. That is the real indictment buried in the comedy. Tony is not surrounded by professionals. He is surrounded by moods. And the episode twists the knife further in the way things unfold after Tony shows up. The problem is not just that Paulie and Christopher got lost. It is that even the rescue does not give Tony clean closure. The car is gone. The money is gone. There is no body. There is no weapon. There is no proof of anything. The situation keeps slipping out of Tony's fingers even when he is physically there, even when he is supposedly the man in charge. That feeling of holding a line that keeps moving under him is what drives Tony crazy all through the series. He can handle danger. He cannot handle stupidity. Danger has rules. Stupidity has no floor. When Tony finally gets them home, you can see his disappointment and how quiet he is. He is not shocked anymore. He is tired. He knows the pattern. They tell him a version of events that is just clean enough to survive and just dirty enough to feel real. They leave out the worst parts. They protect each other not out of deep brotherhood, but out of fear of what Tony might do if he heard every detail. Tony still needs them, so he cannot just cut them loose. This is another part of the children problem. A normal boss in a normal business can fire incompetent people. Tony cannot. These men are his structure, his history, his family, and the twisted way that word works in his world. His power is tied to them, so their weakness is part of him whether he likes it or not. The show gives Tony a symbol of this childish thinking in the form of Valeri himself. Tony finds out from Slava that Valeri is not some random nobody, but a serious guy, a survivor, the kind of man who can take a bullet and keep going. All of a sudden, this is not just a messy day. It is a hanging threat. In a calm, well-run organization, that threat would be mapped out, contained, tracked. There would be a plan. In Tony's world, the threat gets swallowed by denial. The episode ends with the idea that Valeri is out there somewhere, maybe alive, maybe dead, and nobody really knows. Tony tries to push the weight of that onto Paulie, telling him that if this thing ever comes back, it is on his head. He is trying to force adulthood into a system that mostly runs on fear and impulse. Pine Barrens is not only about Paulie and Christopher, though. The episode cleverly mirrors this idea of fake adulthood in the other storylines. Meadow catching Jackie Jr. cheating is another example of someone realizing the person in front of them is not who they were pretending to be. Jackie wants to be seen as a man, as someone who can stand next to Tony as the heir to his father's name. But he behaves like a kid chasing every impulse and expecting endless chances. Meadow, who has spent years romanticizing this world in her own way, starts to see how hollow that can be. She has to grow up a little in that episode, accepting that feelings do not magically turn a boy into a man. Tony's relationship with Gloria in the same episode is another mirror. He is dealing with a woman who is passionate and unstable, who flips from warmth to rage in seconds. Their relationship turns into crisis management, argument, makeup, argument again. Tony can handle physical violence with clear rules. He struggles with emotional chaos, and yet he keeps walking back into it, both with Gloria and in his work life, because that chaos feels familiar. He grew up in it. He learned to read it. A quiet, stable world would almost feel empty to him. So he complains about his children, but keeps choosing people and situations that keep him in the center of the storm. If you pull back, Pine Barrens is Tony being forced to see the limits of what he has built. His men look tough, but toughness is not maturity. His higher-ups look experienced, but experience is not discipline. He has soldiers who can hurt people, but not enough people who can think 3 steps ahead without getting emotional, without letting ego blow up something that was already finished. When Silvio's out of the picture for a day, the difference between a real adult and a ranking child becomes painfully clear. It is like pulling one brick from a wall and suddenly seeing how weak the structure behind it really is. The funniest parts of the episode are the arguments in the woods, the lost shoe, the ketchup packet, the ridiculous image of two mobsters wrapped in a filthy rug and stumbling through the snow. But the scariest part is what those jokes imply. If Paulie and Christopher cannot handle a simple collection without turning it into a near disaster, what happens in the moments that really matter? What happens when the stakes are a war with New York, or a major RICO case, or a witness who might talk? Tony already knows the answer, because he has seen versions of it over and over again. Things only stay standing because he is always there to fix them at the last second. By the end of Pine Barrens, Tony is left with the same problem he had at the beginning, only now it is sharper in his mind. He cannot promote his way out of this. The pool is the pool. These are the men he has. These are the men who survived the years before the show even started. These are the men whose flaws were tolerated because, for a long time, the world was loose enough that the organization could absorb the damage. But the world around them is getting tighter. Law enforcement is smarter. Money is harder to make. Mistakes cost more now. In that kind of setting, childish men are not just annoying, they are fatal. There is also a quiet irony in the way Tony reacts once the immediate crisis has passed. He yells, he threatens, he lays down that this kind of screw-up cannot happen again, but deep down he knows it will. Tomorrow it will be something else. Maybe Ralph's temper, maybe Christopher's drug problem, maybe Paulie's paranoia, maybe AJ acting out at school. Everywhere he turns, Tony finds people who want the title of adult without the weight of it. And because he is who he is, he keeps stepping in to carry that weight for them. That is why the episode feels almost more tragic on rewatch. You know Tony will never really change the way he chooses people. You know he will never truly step away from the need to be the one who fixes everything. Pine Barrens gives him a rare chance to see the full picture, to see his top guys left alone with a simple task and watch it explode. He takes in that information, he feels the anger, he sees the childishness. Then he folds it back into the rhythm of his life and keeps going. That is his curse as a boss and as a person. He understands the problem better than anyone, but he is too deep in it, too tied to these men and this world to do anything except patch the leaks and wait for the next one to burst. Pine Barrens is Tony driving out into the cold to pick up his captains, like they are teenagers who crashed his car at a party and then lied about it. It is the boss of a criminal empire walking through literal frozen emptiness to gather up the human mess he is tied to. It is Tony realizing, again, that he cannot hand off responsibility because responsibility in his crew keeps turning into ego, panic, and blame. And the saddest part of all is that he built it this way. He picked these men. He trained them. He rewarded their worst traits when those traits made money. The system worked for a long time, until one day it did not, and by then it was too late to rebuild it from the ground up. Pine Barrens shows you that truth in one long, darkly funny day in the snow, and once you see it, it colors every scene that comes after.